welcome everyone. Welcome, good evening once more for joining this conversation this evening. This is Njenje Media TV, and what we intend to achieve here is to explore the truth behind the headlines everyone reads, and to get those that are in charge and are in the know of what is happening at the Enugu International Airport to tell us what is happening. Now, I must note, before I bring in the guest, I must note here that August 2020 marks 1 year that the airport was closed for runway rehabilitation. So, and exactly the reason why I wanted this conversation to be today, because exactly 1 year, that case was done in 40 days. Originally planned for 42, but was done in 40 days. But Enugu International Airport has been closed for today, 366 days. I have here with me and with us this evening, we have Engineer Chris Okoye. And for those of you who do not know, Engineer Chris Okoye is the chairman of the Southeast Governance Committee on Akanu Ibiam International Airport Rehabilitation and the palliatives that was meant to be done. On that note, I will be handing him over to, tell us what has been done at the airport so far. Are we still expecting these airports to open in 6 days' time? And thank you very much, sir, for agreeing and for making our time. I know you're a busy person, and it's not been easy. We've chatted a couple of times. It's been crazy, getting the right time for you. But thank you, and we do appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and also for inviting me to join you in this short dialogue on the going on, of course, at the Enugu International Airport. Let me first of all say that you will recall that the contract for the refurbishment and resurfacing of the Akanu Ibiam International Airport was awarded sometime last year. Indeed, the contract was only finalized sometime between October and November last year. Even though the general public had been told that the contract had been awarded, but the processes for the bringing together to final conclusion, the procurement processes did not actually come to fruition until sometime in early November. Yes, the money was voted and the money had to be assessed and the money had to be released to the executive ministry. And eventually, of course, they had to go through the procurement process, which then led to the final award of the contract to PW. It was awarded as an all-embracive contract. That meant, of course, that all the PC items that were incorporated in the contract were treated as part of the contract to PW. Hence, PW was then supposed to actually nominate the specialist contractors that were going to handle all the specific things that were embedded in the contract. But eventually, of course, we thought it otherwise, that rather than have PW be allowed to nominate the specialist contractors, we came to the conclusion that those items should be treated as PS items, and hence give the capacity to the executive ministry to nominate the specialist contractors. And so that contract was actually at that point in time made up of the runway, the airfield lighting that was also going to be provided at the airport, and all the other necessary things such as airport markings and so on and so forth. And that came to a sum of about approximately 8.5 billion naira. There were other projects associated with that first phase of the project, and that was also part of the fencing of the entire airport, which is also approximately 12 kilometers of fencing, broken down into 9 kilometers of solid fence, concrete fence, and 3 kilometers of steel wire fence. There was also the water treatment plant that was meant to supply water from the river across the airport at Engr, which was meant to be dammed, and then of course with some reticulation process, of course, to now terminate with a water treatment plant, and then again delivering water into the airport facility. There was also a solid waste treatment plant, and finally, of course, what we call the perimeter road that runs parallel, of course, to the perimeter fence. So these were all the items that were made up of the first contract that was awarded to all various contractors, apart from the runway and, of course, the airfield light, which was awarded to a company called GGM and so on. So the contract took off, of course, in October, I would say October, November. At that point in time, of course, we were hoping that this contract would have been delivered by December. But because of all the intervening problems that came in, it wasn't possible to sort out all the procurement processes. And hence, we came to the conclusion that the December date was not realizable. Hence, a new date was chosen, which was then to be done, completed in April before the Easter of this year. One significant point that must be made, of course, in terms of trying to differentiate between what was done at Abuja Airport and Enugu, Akanu Ibiam International Airport, is the fact that when Abuja Airport was done, it was strictly just the runway that was awarded. There was no other project that was associated with the renovation of the Abuja Airport. The second thing that must be noted, the striking difference, of course, is the fact that Julius Berger demanded that it should be paid upfront. So whilst that contract was also about 8-point-something billion naira, but Julius Berger was paid 100% of the money required to execute the Abuja Airport. And so that is not the same character as what really happened in Enugu Airport. Enugu Airport was treated through a procurement process, and payments were going to be made as obviously the work progressed. And so this is a very, very important striking difference, that between what happened at Abuja and the Enugu. Eventually, of course, the company then started work and was doing marvelously well until the COVID era came in. that is the COVID-19 pandemic, which obviously led to a number of companies closing down because most of their expatriates decided to leave Nigeria. It took quite some effort to keep them up to the point, of course, they then decided to close shops and then left sometime about March. Unfortunately, we intervened and were able to bring them back sometime in May. But of course, as you well know, when they came back, there were all kinds of problems that were associated with the closure of all the borders between within the Southeast region, because almost every state had to control its borders at that time during this period. And so there were what one might call logistic problems associated with the movement of some of the materials they needed to do the wrong way. Things like crushed stone base, which was also coming from Abakaliki, things like bitumen, that was also coming from Warri, some from Port Harcourt. And of course, we also had a number of other things that had to come from the Lagos port. So these were very peculiar problems because quite often they had problems trying to move products through the borders of some of these states. I could well remember that at a stage, we constantly had a war fighting between Enugu and, of course, Ebonyi State because of the regulations the government had actually put out in terms of movement of people and vehicles from one state to the other. So it was quite a nightmare to try to manage these logistics problems so as to get them to move from one state to the other. I could imagine also where they had to move bitumen from Niger Bridge to Anambra, from Anambra to Harcourt, and again, you knew what happened with the River State governor shutting down his borders completely. So these were all the mitigating factors that we had to battle with to be able to get the project still running, even though we had to force the contractor to return back to site. Of course, the other problem was that some of the people they had also brought in to work with them were primarily from the north, and so many of them decided to go back to see their families, particularly when the talk about closure of borders became valid, that every state had to control its borders. Many of the workers were afraid that they wouldn't be able to go back again if the borders were closed. So there was also that problem associated with having to manage workers that were torn between going to see their families and also working here. So these were very, phenomenal problems that we had to deal with, logistics and so on. And so against the background of all these problems, the company then started, and then of course proceeded to where we are today. And one can say that, but that in spite of all these problems, that they have managed to almost deliver the runway. One that we are again concerned that this weekend, perhaps the first phase will come on, whilst the second phase of the airfield lighting will probably be delivered sometime in October, November, because of the fact that some of the cables are going to be manufactured and some of the lamps are going to be manufactured to specifications, and they're coming from Germany. And of course, until these things come, into the country, you may not be able to complete the second phase. But of course, the phases have been done in such a way that they should be able to quickly come to terms with that second phase. But remember, the point again remains that even though the second phase will be coming, but we have made arrangements to ensure that they are able to start off with the first phase of the airfield lighting, so that the airport can actually become airfield light driven with the first phase, whilst the second phase will then come in. I think that if you look at runway 26 with the ILS and so on will become Cat 2 model of airfield lighting, whilst the runway 08 will also be infused with Cat 1 now. Cat 1, of course, will be associated with the original ILS that was there, because a new ILS system has been obviously installed at EnuguAirport, and that will then be going into the runway 26, which is the route through which most planes, of course, come in. But of course, the idea was now to make sure that you could now use the two runways and the two sides of the entrances to the airport, assuming, of course, you do have weather problems and so forth. There are other projects associated with this particular procurement, which are not necessarily part of the original 10 billion that the federal government released for this airport development. These are what you might call the Emergency Operations Center, which has been completed virtually, almost about 98% completed. You also have the medical center, which is a requirement by Akanu that you have to have a medical center that is able to take a certain number of patients, assuming you do have a terrorist attack, a plane crash, that the airport should be able to have a clinic that can respond to the needs of the people that might be involved in such crashes or so, before they are taken to permanent and much more sustainable institutions or hospitals. You also have, we have managed to, again, bring in an entrance gate that was also not originally there, that will now be infused with toll gates into the airport. Currently also, we're expanding the parking lot, the original parking lot you had there. Each time, if you recall in the past, that Ethiopian Airlines landed the flight there, the place was almost like a market, as it were. And so an extended parking lot is now being added so as to expand the capacity of the place to accommodate as many vehicles as possible. You also have a labyrinth of drainage work that has also been done, because in the past, of course, in the past we used to have a waterlogged access routes. Whenever it rained, of course, it was a problem at that entrance to the airport. And so, luckily, we have managed to be able to do a line of drains that have taken care of this problem. Hence, they are now trying to link up with a cover that will take the water through a turnout into the other side of the MNA, the road towards MNA. We have also had to battle with a demolition of a number of buildings because of the acquisition of additional land, so as to be able to allow the airfield lighting to be installed. Because you need at least about 9 to 1 kilometer beyond the runway at each end to be able to allow the approach lights to be installed. And so that led to a situation in which quite a number of buildings within MNA and also the other side of runway 08 had to be acquired. And I'm sure that you must have heard in the last couple of days, the demolition that has just been accomplished by the Enugu state government. All these structures have been removed so as to allow the fencing, the perimeter fencing, to continue. So I think that one point that is also being treated now is the existing terminal building, because you know that there is also the international terminal building and the cargo building that will probably come on board, but presently being constructed by CCECC, a Chinese company. This is the part of the contract that was awarded about almost 10 years ago. And efforts are now being made to see how to more or less deliver these projects probably by sometime next year, end of next year. But in the meantime, the attempt now is to renovate and refurbish the existing terminal building so that the existing terminal building can then hopefully be in a state in which it can be compared with any other international airport anywhere in the world. Hence, the toilets are being redone, the ceiling is being redone, the cladding, some of the floors are being redone, and the entire building is going to be repainted also. As I speak to you, of course, this is also going on. So that, in a nutshell, is what has been achieved thus far. So I would probably like to say that there are more than almost 12 to 14 projects that are going on, all simultaneously at this airport. Not necessarily, most of them not necessarily part of the 10 billion that was released by the federal government. Some of them are really being done by internal resources provided by FAN. And of course, Enugu state government, we have also prevailed on Enugu state government to do some two key projects, actually. One is a road, an access road to what you call the VOR that is normally operated by NEMA. And that access road is almost 1.5 kilometers and is being completed now. And also the toilet of this existing terminal building, almost to the cost of about 200 million, is also being funded by Enugu state government. And so we are reasonably satisfied that most of the associated works that will make this airport become a truly international airport are now being realized.
Okay.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Just for clarification here, now the airport will be, the airport would, go ahead, because when the minister, or rather when you visited the airport, I think about 2 weeks ago with the chairman of the Southeastern Governors Forum, that is in the person of Dave Umahi, you made a statement that that airport will be delivered on the 30th if, let's fingers crossed, if we don't have much rain. Now, obviously, we've gone to, we've all turned to prayer warriors since you made that statement. And God in heaven, I believe, have answered our prayers, that there haven't been much rain since then. So, we are hoping that things will pan out right. But for clarifications here, I just have, from what you said, it means the airport is going to open on the 30th, right? But you said phase 1. That means the airport is going to open without the airfield lighting. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. The airport will open with the airfield lighting. Of course, I think that what I said is that the process of delivering the airfield lighting has been broken into 2 phases.
Okay.
So the phase 1 of it is assumed that it will be completed, hopefully before Sunday, I'm sorry. Sunday is 30th, of course. But the second phase, which is the Cat 2 of the airfield lighting, is the one that may well take, up to October, because of the fact that you're going to install piers,
yeah,
within the area that has just been reclaimed, and also the cables that are going to be specially made and manufactured to fit that particular channel. So, and again, that's probably but remember that there was an existing, more or less, and not an ILS. I'm talking about electrical even before this work commenced. And so what we have asked the contractor to do is to try and tap into that resource and hopefully use it to essentially kickstart the first phase of the airport, of the airfield light. And I'm sure that all indications are that they will be able to accomplish that.
Now, okay, thank you. So now, I mean, that's cleared, but it's still to be seen for the for that. We now know that is broken down. The airfield lighting is broken down into two. That means when the airport opens on Sunday, are we expecting only local flights, or at all? Obviously work from what we see today is not entirely completed. That means, are we expecting international flights to use the airport, or is that going to be only local flights for now?
I think let me try and elaborate on this point, because the fact that the airport will be, that is the runway and some part of the airfield lighting will be completed by 30th, does not necessarily mean that flights will commence on the 30th. Okay.
Okay.
Now, we are also to carry out a number of tests. There's the friction test that normally will be required before you can actually turn the airport, the airstrip or the airport into commercial use.
Okay.
The friction test has to be done. One, the PCN test will also be conducted. That's what they call pavement classification number, and which is associated with, of course, the aircraft classification number. These are two tied together because, of course, for every runway, you need to make sure that the PCN is normally higher than whatever aircraft that have been designed for that airport, of course, the ACN. So all these tests will be done. And of course, there's also the ILS classification that has to be done. And of course, it has to be done with an aircraft, of course, landing at the airport as well. All these tests will have to be done. That is one. Two, the airlines will require time to build up their capacity to attract passengers, of course. Northern has actually not been issued. And so they are hoping that Northern will also be issued probably by this weekend or so, or early next week. Normally, you would then have to agree with all the airlines to now begin the rescheduling of the flights into Enugu and so forth. Because you cannot obviously run organization and awareness campaign before you can hopefully turn around aircraft that will, and airlines that would like to begin to fly into Enugu again. So my take, of course, is that probably it will take another 2 weeks for official commercialization of that aircraft, of that runway to commence. So whatever will be done this weekend will be a formal turning over of the runway and so on to fans, so that fans can then begin the process of making sure that the actual commercialization can then begin to kick in.
Okay. So is that specifically for Enugu? Because I don't know. I mean, in as much as I am an aviation enthusiast here, but I struggle to comprehend why we would open up an airport and we wait for, for its usage to be weeks after. One would have thought, in my thinking, I'm a project manager, I'm thinking, okay, if I commission a project and hand over, it should be ready to go. In my thinking, I'm just saying, it's maybe better still should have been that all these testings were done before we commission, so that we can say if an airport, because I would have wanted a situation where, let's take for instance, Ethiopian airline comes into Enugu every Saturday, where everything is done. At the point of commissioning, people will see an airline fly into that runway. Wouldn't that have been a better way to reopen that airport?
No, that's again, if I may have been misunderstood, it is our hope that all the friction, PCN, ACN tests would have been completed by Saturday or Sunday rather. Okay. The point I was making is that there's a big difference between the technical aspect of completing the runway and the associated facilities, and the commercialization of the airport itself. But the efforts that have been currently made are that we must complete all the tests that are required before Saturday. As I speak to you right now, the runway has only just about 600 meters. 600 meters of about 7.5 meters width to complete the runway to the turning part, to the concrete turning part. And I am almost certain that before Wednesday that all this would have been completed. Of course, there might still be some work being done on the shoulders and so forth. So we are hoping that the runway will certainly be delivered, and we've been assured by the airfield, lighting spend that you will also try and complete that first phase. So all things being equal, barring any terrible rains between now and Friday, Saturday, because of course, as you well know, the airfield lighting, because of the special nature of some of the equipment that are installed, cannot allow water to seep into those instruments and so on. So we pray that there won't be any rain between now and Saturday, Sunday, and if that is the case, all the airfield lamps and so on will certainly be coming on and so forth. But the point I was trying to emphasize is that, yes, I'm almost certain that if the airport will be completed on Sunday, that an aircraft must try and come in there as a way of confirming that the runway is in a perfect condition. And of course, the aircraft cannot even come in until the friction, and the pavement tests have been carried out. And actually, the idea is that all this must be carried out before Sunday.
Okay. So, and that includes the markings at the runway.
Yeah, of course. Even the preliminary lining has also been going on, and we hope. Again, that's why we had to even import special paint from Germany, for this runway markings and so on, because you see, as you well know, paint does react with bitumen. If you do not give the certain length of time that is required for an appropriate curing to happen, which is a minimum of about 2 to 3 weeks at least. But now we do not have that, leisure of allowing that 3 weeks to kick in. Hence, a special paint has been imported that will certainly facilitate the process of their being able to do the airport markings. I'm sorry, the runway markings. Those are the the wiring course is completed.
Okay, so quickly, let me bring in Chukuma. Sorry, who raised? Okay, you've unmuted yourself. Can you go ahead and ask your question? I think Chukuma Egemba, right?
Yes. Engineer, good evening, and thank you for making out time to come and enlighten us, update us on what is happening in EnuguAirport. I don't even know how to articulate these questions because there's a lot of them that is doing my head. I am not an engineer. I must acknowledge, must say that so that I don't, not if I make mistake, I should be corrected. I'm not even going to the missed deadlines or not. And I don't think I will be very, 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 very surprised if commercial airlines, more especially international airlines, will start landing in EnuguAirport before the end of next month. But fingers crossed. As I said, I'm not, but by the time all these things, remember we're talking about something that has to comply with international standard. So before every other thing has to be completed, satisfied, tested, and satisfied and passed off. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not something that
can you go straight to the question so that?
Okay, that's fine. As I don't even know. Now, in terms of foreign involvement and the workers from the north, can you explain what you mean here by some of the workers are coming from the north, and that the foreign involvement in terms of procurement of specialist equipment is understandable, and then this and that some of them are constructed by Chinese, this and that. Does it mean that we don't have the capacity in trained engineers who can be able to carry some of this work? Why the engagement of many foreign engineering firms and the workers from not? I don't understand.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, Engineer Okoye, before you answer that, let me also take Innocent Okabam, please, so that we put them together. So Innocent, please.
Yes, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Thank you, Engineer. It's really gratifying to note that work is in advanced stage and you are about to reopen. I want to thank you for the excellent work you have done. I also assume that you are in contact with the Minister of Aviation, and you can answer the question, are we expecting more international carriers to come into Enugu, or are we gonna be stuck only with Ethiopian Airlines? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Engineer Chris, so I'll push back to you now.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Chukuma. I believe that I am as concerned as you are in response to the questions that you have just raised. But if you do recall, when the refurbishment of that airport was going to be procured, the first act of the Southeast governors, was that the project should not be awarded to PW, having been a failure in the first instance.
Exactly.
And they, in fact, insisted at that time that it was going to be awarded to Julius Berger, And so we did everything possible to ensure that that project was awarded to Julius Berger. But it turned out that something happened, and somehow Julius Berger declared that they were not interested, that they were too busy at that time to take on the project. Hence, they did not even participate in the procurement process. That is one. Two, that was what led to our insisting that if the job was going to be given back again to PW, that we had to have an independent consultant to supervise and manage the project. And hence they appointed an independent consultant. But luckily also, the government, the Southeast governors in their wisdom decided to set up this technical committee made up of all the commissioners of works of the various states, and my humble self as the chairman, and of course two other, one Professor Eze and I Bishop Ede. I must say that that was the greatest contribution the Southeast governors made in setting up this committee, because were it not for this committee, 1 million things would have gone wrong. But this is a story for another day. And I am almost certain that that template is now a template that will actually be looked at, perhaps as a way of looking at projects development in the future, particularly when you when there's a need to establish what you might call ownership and the executor role, because most often all the projects in Nigeria have had problems because the owners of the project are never involved in the planning and the execution of these projects, and hence there's a major gulf between the owner and, of course, and the executor and the implementer of that project. Hence, the project was awarded to PW. Now, unfortunately, PW has never really had a base in the Southeast. They have always operated in the North. Once in a while, of course, they go out of the North to do projects in other parts of Nigeria. Hence, most of their workers actually come from the North, you know. And these are workers that have actually been with them for many, many years. So it is not surprising that if they had to go to a new area to work, that they would depend on workers they had trained over many years, because these are specialist works actually, and so on. So if you ask them to recruit new people to be trained on a project that is time bound, I think it would be almost foolhardy for one to insist, and at the same time seeking for quality, compliance, and so forth. So these were mistakes that had been made, but obviously we couldn't correct it in this process. Two, of course, foreign construction companies. I think that this is also a story for another day, because there's something that is fundamentally wrong with Nigeria. In the 80s, I do not believe that we had this kind of madness where almost every project is given to foreign companies in Nigeria now. I mean, when I was involved in construction before I went into consulting again, I mean, we more or less had occasions when we competed with Julius Berger in one or two projects, and we beat them, But that is not the case now. I think that this it was beginning to obviously be escalated as soon as these politicians came in. All they see is not growing the system from the bottom to the top. Everybody was just looking for performance. Whether that performance is one that impacts the society remains something to be discussed, at some future date again. So the second point, of course, you raised this. So I totally agree with you that there's something that needs to be done on this matter. But of course, this is not a matter that we can all deal with at this point in time. It's something that I hope the Southeast governments can begin to look at in terms of education and so on, because education is the key to changing this whole process of making sure that we can use indigenous technology for what we do. The second thing, of course, is that the Innocent talked about a need to have additional lines coming to Enugu, that is international airlines. Yes, I think that this is the greatest asset that Akanu Ibiam International Airport is going to acquire as soon as the procurement that we're going through is completed. ICAO requires that a number of things have to be in place before they can grant what they call the final license to operate as an international airport. Actually, what was given to Akanu Ibiam International Airport was a provisional license. Arrangements are now being made that as soon as all these facilities are finally completed, ICAO will then come to Enugu for a final inspection, which, from indications that I have actually inquired into, will be conducted about November this year. And at that November this year, it is hoped that the final license to make Akanu Ibiam International Airport an international airport with its final license would then be granted. And as soon as it's granted, of course, all kinds of international airlines would then begin to see Enugu as a destination point. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's really getting exciting for many of you who are in the diaspora. So you are getting ready to book in your flight. So I would be inviting Blackie Ijazia, please. Can you unmute yourself and ask your question? Afterwards, Njenje, please get ready. So Blackie, can you start your, are you still there? If not, we'll move to Nana. Blackie, please. Ijazia. Njenje, please, can you take the floor?
Thank you very much, Mazes. Okay. My name is Dr. Njenje, the president of Njenje in the UK and Northern Ireland. My special commendation to Engineer Okoye-led committee, Chris Okoye, for the wonderful work. I believe that you have done. You worked around the clock so far. As Neto Diken and Komel, Omekwa Ozo. One is I have listened to all you have said so far, and this technical test that needs to be carried out, the PCN, the ILS, and the friction testing that needs to be completed between now and Sunday, which you say is still possible. I am enjoying you to make sure that things are not rushed. How do you make sure that things are not rushed? Because we need to get it right. It is important that we open the airport by this Saturday, but we need to make sure that these things are done right. How do you make sure that these things are done right so that we don't, because we want to rush and we make mistakes, because these are things of special technicalities. The other thing is, how are we going to make sure that your committee is not dissolved? Because now that you have different phases, and we know that your committee has actually worked very hard. How do we make sure that, one, your committee is not dissolved? It will also be an appeal to the Southeast governors. I commend them very highly for thinking out the idea of having these special committees backed by Njenje worldwide. I know that. We want to insist that your committee stays on to carry on and make sure that all the phases are completed. Now, do we have a deadline, a time frame to make sure that all the phases, other phases, are completed? What of the funding? Are we making sure that the federal government don't pull out the funding as soon as Saturday comes and they say, yes, it's completed, and then most of the work is not done? So we are commending you for the work done. We want your committee to stay. We want funding to continue. We want all the phases done so that more airlines, we want other international airlines to fly in, because they are dependent on the facilities and the completion. And also your committee needs to fight and make sure that the full license is granted based on the facilities on the ground. So I commend you, I commend the Southeast government, I commend the federal government as well for making fund available, but I want us to be treated like the Abuja airport that took only a few weeks, 6 weeks to be completed. I know a whole lot of work is being done on our own, but it needs to be done and done faster. Thank you very much. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Njenje. Engineer, over to you, sir.
Yes, Nana, thank you very much for the compliments and the very wonderful comments and observations you have made.
Thank you.
First of all, you talked about funding.
Yes.
Let me obviously begin from that, because funding actually is always the big elephant, in the house and so on. I think that if we look at funding, the federal government did release the 10 billion naira required for the runway and airfield lighting refurbishment and so on. So I don't think that for that funding is a problem at all. All that we need to be able to complete both the fencing, the perimeter road, the water treatment plant, the sewage plant, the fence and so on, and the runway and the airfield lighting have been provided. All the money also that was required by NEMA, in fact, we had, unknown to many people, we had worked cooperatively and collaboratively with NEMA to deliver some of the projects that they have in that airport now. I mean, almost, in fact, if you spoke to the gentleman that is in charge of NEMA in Enugu now, he will tell you that what he has seen that has happened in that airport in the last 9 months has never happened there for the past 15 years. So I think that funding does not seem to be a problem to that extent. The second phase of the funding, which is actually for the other projects that are going on, these are projects that are being funded by FAN directly, and we have had to intervene. And that's why these projects are being delivered. As I speak to you, for instance, the entrance gate was not even part of the project that was to be done immediately, but we had to force that project be done now, and it's just being delivered, and it's almost so that we can now have a gate system that will be linked also to the international terminal building when it is finished as well, and a tolled type of entrance rather than have a system that is not technology driven and so forth. So, and of course, we have also had to request Enugu government, being the host state where this airport is now more or less domiciled, to also chip in their own more or less contributions to making sure that the airport is delivered and on time. And I think they're not being badly at all. So all hands have been on deck to ensure that funding does not prevent the accomplishment of all the set goals for making EnuguAirport and Akanu Ibiam International Airport and of course, a truly licensed airport. You talked about sustainability, of course, of this committee. I think it's obviously left to the Southeast Governors Forum to think through this process. And I have already talked about the value this committee has brought to what happened in this project, and I think it's tremendous. It's each time I close my eyes and think through what would have happened if we had not become a facilitator, both technically and otherwise, in this project. I'm sure half of this project will not have been completed even till next year. I believe that what has happened, of course, even the minister, the last time he came to EnuguAirport, Akanu Ibiam Airport, he said to everybody that without Chris Okoye's led committee, that this airport would not have been delivered. He said it openly, actually. So when we started they were suspicious of our interventions, of course, how public servants behave and so forth. But lately they have virtually, in fact, they call me even at 1 o'clock in the morning, so that shows you the kind of wonderful relationship we have created with all the stakeholders involved in the project. So I think it's something that will that has gone very well, and I think it's something that is worth studying that model to see what value it has brought to the way projects are delivered, not only just in the Southeast, but also in other parts of Nigeria. Completion of the projects, I assure you that all the projects in this phase will be completed, probably all of them before October. All of them. The outstanding projects will be completed before October, end of October. Yes. Thank you very much indeed, Nana.
Well, thank you very much. So it's really heartwarming to note that even if, because that's actually many people that have spoken to me, many people I've spoken to that have seen the pictures and the videos of this work status of that airport are thinking, if this airport is not going to be completed before, I mean, now we understand better because you've explained and it's now in phases. So it's, again, heartwarming to note that even if the ones that are not done up till Sunday this week, that before, and let's say November, they will be done. And we will remain grateful if that is done and it's done timely. I have one more question here that is on the chat box and the question is, in view of the epileptic nature of electricity supply in the country, what is being done to keep constant supply of electricity 24/7 at the Enugu International Airport? Can you please tell us? I mean, we also know that we've seen solar panels being installed at the airport, but we do not know if that solar panel is only for the ILX or is it for the airport?
Yes, that's a very good question, because I didn't even tell you that we have also caused all the external doors into the airport to be changed to electronic doors. EnuguAirport never had electric-driven doors at any of the external entrances. This is also part of what is actually now being done in the existing terminal building. And of course, if you're going to have an electronically driven external door, that means that you must have constant power. So they have obviously made provisions to have a combination of solar power, generators, of course, and then again the national grid system, and so NEMA has actually developed its own power source to every equipment they've installed at the airport, whether it is for their ILS, for whatever system they have in the airport. They have not actually depended on fan to provide that source of power. What has happened is that everybody, because of the funny nature of the way the power grid system is run, everybody makes sure that nothing can compromise the system they have at the airport. So that's basically what has happened. For instance, the pilot's lounge, or what you might call the pilot's briefing room, which was set up by NEMA, they had to provide a small power system to ensure that it has a 24-hour supply, so that when the pilots come out, they are generally briefed in that room before they now board the next flight, of course. In their VOR, they have their own power supply. The ILS that has also been installed, they have solar power and also, generator, and of course also the national grid system. So there is an interplay of having three sources of power, as it were, because you can't really depend on any particular source now. But I think that it does appear to me that when this phase is finished, there might be a need to do a reconfiguration and a restudy of the power needs of that airport and to see how this can be improved, particularly going forward into the national commercialization of that airport as a truly international airport.
Okay, thank you very much. So before we let you go, sir, on the airport terminal, I mean, so if I understand properly, the airport terminal will be among what, I mean, the old airport terminal will be among what is going to be ready by Sunday, if that is correct.
No, because actually the amount of work that is going on now at the existing terminal building is such that it might be almost impossible to have it ready before Sunday. For instance, I could give you a typical idea of what is going on now. All the toilets in the existing terminal building, and there are about 8 toilets there, none of them meet even local standards, not to talk about international standards. You know, the people that actually worked on that, you know, what they did actually was to use existing building, and they modified that existing building to get what you now have there. And in the process of doing that, most of the toilets were not properly treated. You know, hence you would find that in the past, whenever you came into Enugu, Akanu Ibiam International Airport, you couldn't actually use the toilets because they were smelly. You know, the ventilation system was hopeless. There was no air conditioning system, and so on. So a complete new design has been done for all the airports. You're now going to have new systems that will also be sensitive to, more or less sensitive to the protocol of COVID pandemic and so on, so that you have taps that you can just, with a close contact, you can then turn on the water. The same will also happen for the dryers and so on and so forth. You want to also be able to provide for baby changing, platforms. You want to provide for handicapped people to be able to use the toilet facilities and so on, because right now there's no provision for that at all. You want to provide for all kinds of sensor related, systems that will more or less, and ventilation, air conditioning and so forth, that will now go up to the roof and so forth. So we believe that the toilet system will probably take about 2 weeks, 3 weeks to complete. But the idea, of course, is for them to do 1 or 2 that will actually be focused within the departure lounge or so, and hopefully the others can then continue. They are changing the ceiling. They are changing you'll notice that the what you might call the cladding of that building is already falling apart. So they're changing the cladding completely.
So we hope they will change the Chinese inscriptions as well.
I'm sorry?
I said we hope they will change the Chinese inscriptions. You know, when you come into the Enugu Airport, those Chinese decorations and inscriptions there, we hope they will yank them off as well.
Oh, no, you're referring to the international terminal building now. Okay?
No,
because
the international terminal building is not in use. It's not in use.
Yeah, that's why you have this. That's why you have the sign. Well, that is obviously the fence of the. But I think you have a point there. Why should they have Chinese signs on a fence? That fenced in the building, that is the international building that is going on. Maybe that's a point you just made, and I probably would like to consider that and probably mention it to FAN to see how that can be erased, actually, because as soon as the airport is open, I don't see why those Chinese marks should actually remain on the existing external fence they have for the international fence building. But I think that we're even talking about doing now asphalt overlay from the road, from the MNA road right into all the airport road. That is externally now.
Oh, okay.
So that as you come into the airport, you are now going to have at least a new drive into the airport, too. And I think there's also some consideration that is going into trying to allow technology to drive almost everything that is going to be in the airport. This is being worked upon and worked out. In other words, the taxi system, the toll system, the parking lot system, and even the porter system. The idea, of course, is to see if we can make the airport a lot, technology driven to the extent where you don't have people milling all over the place. And I think that this is also being looked at again. Enugu Airport, Akanu Ibiam Airport may well be used as a model for the takeoff of this process. And if it works, then perhaps they are thinking about extending it to all the airports in Nigeria.
Okay. So, we have one more question from James Obuka Umekwe. He says, how much Chinese loan is involved in the funding of these airports, if any? James, I don't think, anyway, you can answer that question, but I don't think there is any Chinese loan here for the 10 billion. But in answering this question, please, we understand that the Chinese are doing the new terminal. At the beginning, you mentioned that the new terminal is likely to be ready by next year, maybe towards the end of next year, right? So it's, and that we are doing with Chinese loan or without Chinese loan, but by a Chinese company. Somehow Chinese come into it.
Actually, the company that is doing the international building, the terminal building, and the cargo building is the same company that did Abuja terminal building, Port Harcourt terminal building, and Kano terminal building.
Yes.
Port Harcourt, Kano, and Abuja were awarded as a loan and an Exim Bank of China that actually funded all those three projects. Now, unfortunately, what has happened is that there was a matching fund that Nigeria was supposed to provide for Abuja and Port Harcourt when the two terminals were completed. And they were assured that as soon as they completed those two terminals, that the matching grants would actually be released to them. Unfortunately, up to this moment that I'm speaking to you, those grants have not been paid.
No surprise.
Yeah. Now, so I got to learn about this, and so I suggested to the Honorable Minister, confidence, of course, that he should invite CCECC to some meeting to explore the possibility of finding out how they could be paid the matching grant for what happened at Abuja and Port Harcourt. And if they were paid those funds, could they therefore move into Enugu and complete the international terminal building and the cargo building? Okay. As you well know, that project was awarded to them at almost about 14.5 billion naira when it took off. And I understand that up to this moment, they have been paid about 7.5 billion naira. But I am now told that it will probably cost about another 15 billion naira to complete the project because of the long delays and so forth. That's what, the information that I'm getting from farmer now, from a fan now. And this has to be funded directly, of course. I think that the minister is obviously now trying to see what he could do to, and of course the chairman of the aviation committee, who also comes from this area of the country, Mr. Nolly, to actually allow for a substantial amount of money on this vote for next year's vote. But if obviously the exploration that is being made works, then it means, of course, that they might be prepared to, if they are paid the matching grant that is still outstanding for Abuja and Port Harcourt, to now come in and begin the process of completing Enugu, in the hope, of course, that substantial provision will now be made next year for those airports. So that exploration is being made now, and I hope it does work out.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for all the insight. I think, is there any other person, do you still have any question? I mean, in Igbo we say, because we don't have you every day. So the moment we'll have you, we would endeavor to take all necessary questions and clarifications. And once more, like Njenje said, we thank you very much for the job you are doing and the job your team are doing as well. The Igbo Nation and the entire region owe you a lot and owe your team a lot for the job. I mean, professional here, it's really shocking to note when you said that if not for the involvement, if, you know, we might be lucky to see even 50% of the job done till yet. And, you know, and we can see why what has been done before, why they failed. And many of us had issues when you people were meeting in Enugu, and initially the chairman of the Governors Forum said the project was likely to go to Julius Berger. And when PW was announced, people like myself, obviously furious. What General Obasanjo will refer to reinforcing failure. When someone have done a project that failed, and rather than obviously do the needful, that every one of us understand what that means, but we basically gone back to the person that have done the work that failed, and not only once. Bear in mind that was done twice, and this failed twice. So, and now that it's working, it's not gainsaying. It's in thanking you people that because of your involvement, because of your professional, you know, engagement, monitoring this project, making sure that things are done right. That's why we can sit down here and talk about that this project is beginning to be delivered, and part of it will be delivered by next Sunday. And we hope, as you promised us here, that by end of October and maybe or in November, that we will be having the whole project delivered. And I believe many people in the diaspora are watching us now, and those that will watch this later on the internet, they would understand that, you know, it is gratifying that maybe within the next 2 weeks, they could start looking for their Christmas ticket, you know, as you said, when the testings are done, and if the airlines begin selling tickets and those booked towards Port Harcourt might still get email to say, are you willing to, or are you interested in, you know, routing your ticket to Enugu? And that will be very gratifying, and that will begin to bring back the business life again that's been dead around the airport. Everything we hope will begin to come back to our life. So on that note, we thank you very much. I don't know if you have any concluding thoughts. You know, it has been a very fantastic hour that we have spent with you, and I do know that you had a very stressful day and you still made that time to join us this evening. So I don't know if you have any concluding, yeah?
All right, it's okay. I want to certainly extend my delight in being invited to join you in this program. You won't believe it, of course, I was actually invited to some emergency meeting this evening, and I had to tell the people that even though the meeting was very compelling, in fact, it was actually the governor that was calling me, you know, for something, but I thought that this program was also important, so I had to find a way to wriggle out of that meeting, you know. I want to say that I'm totally delighted to have been of some help, and I hope I was able to clarify some areas that have been hitherto unclear to many people. I do believe that Enugu remains a home for all depots in the southeast. And if this airport is realized, particularly the cargo part of the airport, I'm sure that is going to, in fact, one of the interesting things that you may not even remember, I may not have even dwelt upon, is the fact that when we actually came on board, nobody was talking about the cargo building anymore. It was not even being discussed because they were not able to provide a land on which to build the cargo building. And so that's what delayed the cargo building takeoff. The cargo buildings take off for almost 10 years. So when we came in there, we insisted that the cargo building must take off. And so we immediately worked out a way to actually acquire a piece of land for the takeoff of the cargo building. And so so they started. And of course, another problem was that we wanted to make sure that you would not have the same entrance into the airport also as for people coming in to carry their cargo out of the airport. So there was a need to also work out an entrance, or what you might call an access road, into the cargo terminal. And this was also one of the things we worked upon, and then, of course, was able to, working with the state government, to define the right access into that airport. So you're going to have now 2 gates, as you have in Lagos Airport, for cargo area and also for passenger area. As soon as this cargo building was started, the Air Force, we now found out that the Air Force owns that land. And of course, the Air Force one day suddenly came and stopped the work. But we have managed to go into all kinds of negotiation with the Air Force, and they have agreed now that they're going to allow the cargo building to continue.
Wow.
Well, this is again some of the misnomers that you have in an airport of that nature. Why should the Air Force continue to remain there? But this is a matter for another day. But what I think it's important is that they have now made available that area, and that the cargo building hopefully shall soon commence again, even though they were stopped. Hitherto for the past 10 years, nobody was even talking about starting it at all. So I think one is looking forward to, therefore, that if the cargo building is opened, is built and opened, then people can bring their cargo from any part of the world into Enugu. And could you imagine our importers and exporters using these facilities around here rather than stopping in Lagos or Port Harcourt to come down to this place? That will add tremendous value to the GDP of the Southeast. And I hope that that is something that we will all be looking forward to. Once more, I thank you very much for inviting me, and I think I've enjoyed almost every session of it.
Thank you very much. And before you go, I think I remembered something, sorry. That's about the glass mesh that was used on the runway. I think I read somewhere that that's been the only airport in Nigeria that, where that sort of technology has been used for the first time. Is that correct? Yes, indeed.
It's a very good observation that you have made. It's not only just the glass fiber. It's called glass fiber.
Glass fiber mesh, yeah.
Yeah, right. This was also used at Abuja Airport, actually.
Okay.
Abuja Airport was the first one that had it also. And so we also insisted that to be used here. So that was used there before the binder course was finally put in, So I think it's the only 2 airports that have it now is Abuja and Enugu.
So what does he do for a layman who hears about the glass fiber being used on the runway? What does he do to the runway that makes it special?
Well, one, of course, is that it also controls water. That is what you might call the seepage of water to the substructure of the runway is to a very large extent protected from so that is also a very fundamental. So the permeability, therefore, it's again reduced a very reasonable minimum, assuming any water seeps in there. Two, it also acts as a binding force, even though it's in terms of what you might call little cracks that might ordinarily appear within the binder area, will also act as a binding force for it as well. So these are the two things that, of course, that is purely mainly for making sure that the place is sealed off from water being able to get into the substructure of the runway. The other part of it, of course, is the concrete turning pad. The two ends of the turning pads now are specially designed turning concrete pads. I don't think that there's any airport that has it in Nigeria right now. Enugu, Akanu Ibiam Airport is the first airport that has actually concrete turning pads right now.
And why did we have? I mean, I'm not. If I look at Port Harcourt International Airport, obviously there is a taxiway, and Enugu International Airport, there is no taxiway. We're using the runway as the taxiway. Initially I was thinking, if we're going to go into this rehabilitation, shouldn't we have done a taxiway for that international airport?
Well, of course, you have almost 6 taxiways now. In fact, part of what they are going to be doing now from tomorrow is also because we had to again we did some milling of some of the taxiways so as to be able to link them up properly, particularly with the international wing. So there are almost about 5 to 6 taxiways, which you will now find that perhaps I will even try and take some pictures of the taxiways and then try and funnel them to you. So there are taxiways that are going to be part of what is being done now.
Okay. On that note, thank you very much. We won't be keeping you. And it has been a very exciting evening, and I've enjoyed every bit of it. Thank you very much. One comment from James Umekwe, who says, Mr. Okoye, thank you so much for being exceptionally upfront and honest in this presentation. Though I came in very late, but your question and the answer to the question on Chinese loan was answered exceptionally well. Thank you very much, and I will join him to say we are indeed very grateful. It is now our job to pass on these informations that you've shared with us this evening. We will be sharing them on YouTube and Facebook for people to now go back and listen to the truth of what is happening at that international airport. Thank you once more for having the time and for joining us this evening. Thank you.
Mazi, thank you. Thank you, Mazi. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. God bless you,
Thank
Engineer.
you.
Thank you, Mazi. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
La la la.